Blog Talk Radio.
Live from Winston-Salem, it's Sunday Night Dead.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Sunday Night Dead. This is Tracy Todd from Emerald Coast Paranormal Concepts here in Panama City, Florida. I want to thank all of you for joining us this evening. Along with me tonight is the wonderful Luana Kurz from Colorado Shadow Investigations out of Denver. Hello, Luana, you with us?
I'm here. How are you doing?
I am good. I saw the other day you guys got some snow. Is it enough just to piss you off?
Yeah, it's just enough to make everybody slam on their brakes, but it was melted within pretty much by the time it hit the ground. So, and then right now it's starting to snow again. So I know the mountains are getting a lot of snow, but down here in the area that I live in, it's just raining and kind of snowing off and on. So.
Are you a big skier?
It's full day. Am I a big skier?
Mm-hmm.
I used to be, and then I got into snowmobiling, and that kind of became my escape in the wintertime. I used to love to go up every weekend and just, I could hit different mountains and be on the top of a mountain within a matter of minutes. It was really neat. But ever since kids, kind of changed that a little bit for me.
Well, don't they make sidecars for snowmobiles?
Mm-hmm. I'm sure they do. The only problem is when you roll them, I don't know how safe it is.
Oh, well, you always got that, I guess. Well,
Yeah.
tonight you brought with you a very special guest with you tonight from a very special place that you and your team visited in August of this year and August of last year.
Yeah.
This is one of those places that it's been on my bucket list for a while, but I just can't seem to get my butt up there to do it. So he is on. If you could introduce your special guest tonight and give a little history about who he is and what he does.
Okay, yeah, tonight from the Waverly Hills Sanatorium we have Mike Flickner. And you may recall, if you've seen the Ghost Adventures episodes, Mike was actually on the Waverly Hills edition of that episode. And I first met Mike last August, August of 2012, when I went out there with my team. And I was fortunate enough to be able to spend some of the investigation with Mike. And Mike has actually been the resident investigator there for some time. So I'll let him do his own introduction to share how long he's been at Waverly, but let's go ahead and bring Mike on. Hello?
Hey, Mike, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Cool.
How you doing, Mike?
Oh, pretty good. How are you, Anna?
I'm doing fine. I know that, like, right now you guys are doing at Waverly Hills, you guys put on a haunted house every year, right?
Oh, yes. This is one of our busiest times of the year up there, and this year it is fantastic.
Really?
Actually, doing 3D mapping of the building. So if anybody would like to come out and see it, it's really, really cool. The building just comes alive at you. But yes, with the mini tours and that we're doing up there, yeah, it's pretty busy.
Well, I was going to say, I know that some of those tours keep you going for quite a while, huh? Like this morning you said it was kind of a late night for you?
Oh, yeah, we were still there until 4 o'clock this morning, still getting people through the building. But, yeah, it's pretty good year for us up there. What I
Very nice.
do for, excuse me?
Oh, I just said very nice. That's interesting. Go ahead.
What I usually do for Waverly Hills is I head up all their paranormal investigations up there. I am a parapsychologist for 39-plus years and paranormal investigator, too. And I know the building quite well. And, Luana, can you remember some of the experiences that we had there?
Yeah. Actually, I want to talk about those here in a little bit. And I guess when you say parapsychologist, what is that? If you can explain to our listeners what that
Well,
is.
there's many different degrees in parapsychology. It goes into cryptozoology, UFOlogy. There's a lot of different degrees in spiritualism and stuff. My specialty is in the spirits, and that's what my degree is in. And so basically that's my main point of study.
Okay. Very nice. I guess, so how long have you been at Waverly? Is it, you said 9 years?
9 years.
9 years. Okay. So I guess just if you had to tell our listeners a little bit about what is there on a normal basis, what you have found with your research over those 9 years, what have you found that resides there as far as friendly spirits, angry spirits, probably a little bit of both?
Well, you can't have good without the bad.
Exactly.
Basically what I tell people when they come to Waverly Hills, there's really nothing there that's going to harm you. But I always tell people to trust your gut instinct. You know, if you don't feel good in an area, don't stay in that area. As far as spirits go, spirits use symbolism to get their point across. If you hear any growls that come out of any rooms or any place on the property, then, you know, you shouldn't be in that area. Because the spirits, you know, they will use that so that you'll know where they're coming from. But for the most part, Waverly Hills has been haunted way before Waverly was even up there. It goes back to the river Indians. And the Indians used to call this the spirit woods. And, of course, Waverly is built on the highest point of Jefferson County, Kentucky. And this is just a theory. We don't know this for fact. The Indians would always bury their dead up on the highest point of any ridge. And it goes to stand, since they called it the Spirit Woods, that there may even be Indian burial grounds there. We don't know for sure.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And then I think most people that have been following Waverly Hills know that it was a tuberculosis hospital. And so if you can give our listeners a little background of the building and, when it was used for that purpose and then after what it became.
Okay, well, Waverly Hills actually started out in the 1800s up there. It used to be a tent city. And in 1914, they built the first sanatorium up there. It was a small wooden structure that housed about 40 patients. And then when tuberculosis hit its prime back in the 20s, they seen a need for a bigger structure, so they asked 4 judges from the town of Louisville, Kentucky, pull together the money to build the structure that's there today. It cost $1.1 million to build the structure that's there today, and construction started on that in 1924 and was completed on October 13th of 1926, which is a massive going, to build a structure that big. They would have been working around the clock with all the plaster and the masonry work that went into the building. And Waverly Hills operated in this structure from 1926 up to 1961 when it finally closed its doors. It's after streptomycin made it to the hill, which is a miracle antibiotic, which they still use today for tuberculosis. After it hit the hill, Waverly Hills closed its doors a month later. It worked out well. But then it reopened as Woodhaven Geriatrics. The Woodhaven Geriatrics Center ran from 1961 all the way up to 1971. And then they were shut down from the state because they were understaffed. And then after that, it became abandoned for a while.
Okay.
So,
okay.
Let me, Mike, when you said the Indians had this land before it was purchased, right, from them, or just taken, or what?
Well, as far as the purchasing part, no, this goes way back. There was an old general from the Civil War. He used to own it. The beginnings of Waverly, the reason it got its name, and I can't remember the man's name at the moment, but his daughter wanted to start a schoolhouse. She wanted to be a teacher. And there was a little schoolhouse that was built at the bottom of the hill. And her favorite author was a poet by the name of Waverly. And this is how Waverly got its name. And as far as how he acquired the land, I really don't know.
Oh, interesting. Thank you.
Wow. Okay, so when we talk about you started doing the investigating as a resident investigator 9 years ago, and how often are you in there? Like every week, a couple times a week?
Well, usually I'm in there about every night. Except
Okay.
for tonight. I got the night off. But yeah, I've probably been in the building more than 2,000 times doing investigations. And we usually do our investigations during the winter months. When the earth sets down. And the way we do our investigations is kind of unorthodox. I mean, we go in there and we'll blanket the building. We'll blanket it with cameras and recorders and such. We do walkthroughs every once in a while to see what we can pick up on. But we found that most of our evidence that we get up there is from what we call the silent times. When we're not in the building, we set up everything. We monitor the building constantly. And you'd be amazed at the stuff we pick up because they'll sit there and they'll actually have conversations between themselves in the building. it's just like everyday life is going on inside of the building still today.
Well, and that's one of my, I guess, what I'm really curious about, because I'm a resident investigator as well at another location, and this just came up last night. One of the guests that I was doing a tour with asked that same question. You know, do you feel like the spirits interact with each other and, you know, talk to each other? And I feel like they do. I mean, I picked up conversations like of them talking to each other.
Oh, most definitely. Most definitely. I do help with some of the renovation that's up there too. And this is kind of a funny story. A couple of weeks back, I was working up on the second floor. And usually when I work, I don't play radios and stuff because I like to hear what's going on inside the building. And it was a quiet time. It was I was getting ready to go to lunch. And I heard these people talking out in the hallway. And it was a man and a woman. And it's like, wow, I wonder who's in the building. So I got down from what I was doing and kind of walked around to the corner of the hallway, and I hear this woman, and it's clear as day. It's like somebody was there. There was nobody in the building. But she was talking to this man, and she's like, I wonder why they always got to come in here right now. And this man was starting to say something, and I was getting ready to go to lunch, and I said, you know, I can hear you. And then they quieted down. They didn't say anything after that.
Wow. You know, so that was, go ahead.
Mm-hmm. No, I was just going to say, they know we're there.
Yeah, I was going to say that of all the locations I've investigated, and I've done a lot of locations, Waverly was one of the very few places that audibly I heard voices when I was there investigating. This year, multiple investigators on my team, we would all hear an audible voice. And so I thought that was really neat because not a lot of locations that I've gone into I can hear them real time.
Oh, yeah, there's still very many residents that are still there at Waverly Hills. And, yeah, it's like when people do the overnights up there. A lot of people like to leave when the sun's coming up. And it's like, why are you leaving? You know, because this is when they start to talk. And actually, during the daylight hours there is when we get some of our greatest evidence. You see full-body apparitions during the daylight hours. You see them at night, too. In the morning hours, usually when the sun starts to come up and the birds start chirping and stuff, you start hearing conversations going on in the building, which is really strange because you'll hear them down the hallway, and you'll go down there to get a closer look at what they're saying, only to find out that the conversations are coming from the same area that you were just in. So they move around up there. But, yeah, I've heard conversations go on for as long as 20 minutes or so inside the building where they're talking amongst themselves. And we found that out in our investigations before through EVP and also using the spirit box. They'll come through, and you can be listening to them respond to you, but then they'll turn around and they're like they're talking to somebody else. So it's almost like you have more than just one that'll come through. It's like you almost have a whole audience that comes through, and they're talking amongst themselves about you.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I guess for the listeners, you know, when you, with your research that you've done there, because we used to, when it was a tuberculosis hospital, there used to be children there as well. Have you connected with children? Have you connected with, what's your opinion on a majority of what you work with? Do you think they were there as part of Waverly Hills or part of, the nursing home afterwards? Yeah.
Well, I do know that several years back, a good friend of mine, he's a physicist, and he works very close with the television shows, the Ghost Adventures and them. And I'm not going to mention his name because I don't have permission to. But he brought a device that he invented. And in fact, he was the first one to ever invent this, the real-time EVP recorder. And it was a very crude device that he brought up there at the time. And we actually held a conversation with a small girl for over 2 hours. And we were on the second floor. And she came through, and she wanted to know why we were there. Because she said she could see us, that we were fuzzy looking to her. And she actually thought we were ghosts. And she was frightened of us. But she was around other people. And, of course, we couldn't see her or any of the people. And but she described the area that we were in to a T, the way it would have looked like back in the days of Waverly Hills. And she was talking about it, and she was very happy. It was a beautiful building. She was just confused why we were there. Why we were there asking her questions. And she said the other people couldn't see us. So it was kind of like we were talking to a different dimension, a time lapse. And when we asked her what the date was and all that, she described that her date was back in the 1934.
Wow.
And as far as she knew, it was still 1934. And when we explained where we were from, she didn't believe us. She still thought we were ghosts. So a lot of times I tell people when they come up there, if you make contact with a spirit or so, or if you see spirits, but you see many shadows at Waverly, a lot of people ask me, well, we see them, but when we go toward them, they disappear. Well, kind of turn it around. If you've seen a shadow or a spirit coming toward you, what's your first instinct? That was probably not my first instinct to flee, but a lot of people would book, especially if they didn't know what they were looking at. And I think it's kind of the same in the spirit world. If they see us, if it is a time lapse, and they see us and they don't quite understand what we are or who we are, maybe we're spirits or aliens to them, and we go toward them, well, they might not want to get too close at first until they develop that trust factor.
Right.
Have you ever experienced that?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Have you ever experienced that, ma'am?
Yeah, actually, I was going to say when I went to Waverly the first time, I was so amazed at how many shadows we were able to see with our eyes. I mean, that's the reason I went back this year was because of how many experiences we had with actually being able to see with our own eyes. It was you took us up to the 4th floor, I think. When we were you were just giving us the walkthrough initially and explaining where things were. And we stopped because the sun was just starting to go down and there was enough ambient light to light up the hallways. And we just stood there and we watched different shadows pass from side to side. It was really neat. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a daily occurrence.
Yeah, and then the most prominent shadow I saw there was this last August. I was actually walking in with my team, and I think we were actually on the 1st floor. And we came walking down the hallway, and there was that red exit sign down the hall. And, there was one of the red exit signs lit up. And I looked up, because I was kind of looking down at the floor, and it got really dark in one of the corridors, but there was still light from the sides because, again, the sun was just starting to go down. And I very clearly I looked at that red exit sign, and just this big block of shadow mass passed right in front of it to block it out.
Oh, yeah.
And right as I said that, I said to the guy next to me, I'm like, shadow figure right there, and he actually he saw the same thing that I was looking at the same time. It was really, really neat. And it was big. I mean, it was a big mass. It wasn't like, because sometimes the bats and stuff fly through there, and I was trying to think maybe bat flew in front of it. No, it was a big block of shadow mass that blocked out that light, or that exit sign.
Oh, yeah. I've told you about the 3 different types of shadow apparitions up there, haven't I?
Yeah, you probably have. Go ahead and tell the listeners. Yep.
Yeah, well, there's 3 different types. The first type, we put them in categories up there with what people have been seeing. And with my study that I've done up there, I was able to get them down to these 3 different types of categories because people would tell us so many different things. And, when you first come up there, you think a shadow apparition, okay, it's an apparition of a person. Well, it can be and maybe not. So we had to start breaking it down. And we came up with the 3 different types. The first type would be shallows, which is the most dominant. Shallows like shallow running water. The further away they are from you, the more detail you can make out. The closer they get to you, the more they're going to dissipate to your eyes. And they're very, very fast in nature, and they're very, very faint. And you're mainly going to see those out of your peripheral vision. The second type is what we call solids. Solids look as real as you and I. They are 3-dimensional. They're totally dark in nature, so you won't be able to make any facial details or anything like that out on them. You won't be able to see through them. And the third type is called masses. And masses, which what you described, have no shape or size. They can start out the size of a baseball, and they can grow the size to engulf an entire hallway. And they'll block out all ambient lights. But, of course, as I explain to people when they come up there, all shadow apparitions will dissipate with any form of light. If you shine a flashlight on them, you're not going to see them, which a lot of untrained people that come up there, and they like to walk around with flashlights. They're like, well, we're not seeing any shadows. Well, they're there. It's just you're not seeing them. Turn your flashlight off and let your eyes get adjusted. You'll see them. They are there. And that's the hardest thing to get through to people that come up there. I remember the investigations that I sat in with you and your group up there, and they're very, very professional investigations. But there are so many groups that come up there that believe that they are investigators, that they will not turn off their lights.
Right.
And mainly at Waverly, that's how you're going to pick up on stuff. It's the hardest thing to get through to people, that flashlights limit your line of sight in investigations.
Right. That's such a great point, and that really stuck with me. In fact, since I was at Waverly and I investigated with you, I took that, and again, when we do our photography, since then I've been practicing with no flash photography so that I can get, and I'll tell you what, Mike, I got, just a couple months ago, we got our first apparition on camera by not applying the flash and just using it without the flash like you told us to do. Say, try it this way. And I didn't get it to work for a while, and I was kind of frustrated. I'm like, everything's coming out. I can't bring the light source back in. Amazing capture that we had with just turning that flash off of our camera. So great tip. Yeah. And I definitely, this last time when we went in, that's what I was telling the group as well. Like, you got to get, use your flashlight if you need to see to get to your location. Once you get there and you want to start investigating, shut it off. Get your eyes adjusted, and we did. We saw a lot. It was really, really fascinating.
Oh yeah, it's like I said, to most people, they think, oh well, okay, I have to use a flashlight to see where I'm going, but then I need to have the flashlight to see the area. Well, most people, believe it or not, you can see in the dark without light much better than we can with the light. And they're like, well, how are we going to see the spirits? Well, the spirits are of a different light spectrum. I've had a lot of people ask me about even infrared. Well, we're bringing infrared in. We're not seeing anything on this infrared. Well, a lot of times they're flooding the hallway with infrared light. And it's the hardest thing to get across to some investigators, which we have found. If you flood it with one type of light source, you're blocking out the light source that not that they're made of, but that they use. Shadow apparitions are probably the most difficult type of spirit to capture onto film because of their light spectrum that they're made of. Sometimes you can capture them in infrared, but it's not, all that common. Sometimes you can capture them in full spectrum. It just depends on the vibration and the source that they're operating on at the time.
Right. Yeah, very good point. Tracy, did you have some questions that came in chat?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Mike, one of the questions was that since you're the resident investigator there, have you ever been attacked by anything?
Well, that's a tricky question.
I know there's probably different levels of being attacked. So let's go with the most extreme down to the minimal.
Okay. Well, I've been choked before. On the first floor. There's an old spirit that I've been speaking with for years and years, and he's a resident there, and he's still there. And, for the most part, me and him get along. And I'm not going to mention his name. Every once in a while, he kind of gets fed up with me every once in a while. He gets tired of me asking him to, can you do this, can you do that? And he'll get his point across. Usually here lately, he gets his point across because he'll curse me out. And this comes across EVPs. But yeah, so there was one evening when I went in there, I took a team of about 30 people in this room, and I used to communicate with him about temperature changes, surface temperature changes. Say I could shine an IR thermometer at the floor, and say the floor was 70 degrees. I could ask him to take it, for yes or no questions, to take it down to 64 for yes or take it down to 60 for no, and he could do it in an instant, instantaneously. Well, this particular evening, I was in there describing to this group of how you speak with him. We used to call him the code one back then. Since then, he's got a name. But when I was telling him, aim your IR thermometer to the floor and ask him for yes, take it down to this or take it down to that, for no. And all of a sudden, my throat completely just collapsed. I was in the room with some of my students, and I couldn't breathe. I couldn't talk, and it frightened me very much. And I was going down. I was about to pass out. And one of my students, by the name of Mike Couch, he pulled me out of the room. And as soon as he got me out of the room, it released its grasp. And I could breathe again. I mean, I was gasping for air, and now I could finally get back my composure and everything. But, yeah, they can. That's probably the most extreme that I've ever been attacked in any of the spiritual attacks. Other attacks, the same spirit here this last season, and I think it's happened before Luana came back up there. I had people come down, and they were complaining to me in what we call the safe zone. So usually when people come up and do their overnights, we have a safe zone of the building. It's the old laundry room. And I usually don't step into the building with the investigators until they're ready for me to or if they want me to. But I had a group of people come down. They were complaining to me that they didn't want to go on the first floor. And I asked them why, and they said, well, somebody's throwing rocks at us. Well, I knew who was throwing rocks at them. It's the same spirit, because he does things like that. He gets irritable and, he does things like that to get his point across. So I said, okay, I'll take care of it. Well, I went up there and I talked to him. And I said, look, leave these people alone. They're not bothering you. They're not calling you out or anything. They're not messing with you. And pretty much he did. He left them alone until the end of the evening. When it was time for everybody to leave, everybody was coming down. I always have to do a head count when people were coming in to the laundry room. And I felt something drip on the side of my face, on the left side of my face. And I didn't know what it was. And I looked at the ceiling, and it had been raining. I thought, well, we got a water leak. But I put my hand up there to wipe it off, but when I brought my hand down, my hand was covered with blood. And so I ran to the bathroom real quick to see what was going on. And when I looked, my ear was bleeding profusely. It looked like somebody took a razor blade around the rim tip of my ear and split me. Of course, I didn't feel this at the time when it happened, but it was him. It was a psychic attack. See, most people don't feel psychic attacks when they happen. Now, the choking, I did. I felt that when it happened. But other things like bruises, sometimes you can get bruises, you can get cut or scratched, and you don't feel it when it's actually happening, but you feel it in the aftermath. And I think he did what he did at that time just to prove a point to me. It's like, look, you can't tell me what to do. I'll do what I want when I want to. So,
right.
Wow.
But the other question, the top 3 floors of Waverly are pretty much open, right?
Well, all the floors are open except for the first floor.
When you were talking about the conversations with amongst themselves, have you ever took a set of investigators, just a couple of them, like 2 or 3 of them, and stuck one at one end of the hallway and the other one way down at the other end, and just have them chit-chat to see, get maybe like a distance thing going on there?
Yes, we have experimented with that before. We would, and the first floor, that's a good point that you brought up there. The first floor especially, because, see, everybody loves to body shoot. And the body shoot, it is a cool place to investigate. The problem with the body shoot is, like, if you're doing EVP work and stuff, and I'm not avoiding your question here. I'll get back to that. The problem with the body shoot is it echoes so badly inside the body shoot. So if anybody was ever investigating Waverly Hills and you're investigating the body shoot, you have to make sure that there's nobody on the first floor. Because that body shoot, even if they were all the way around to the lobby, which is the furthest end of the building, approximately, I would say it's around at least 700 feet around. If somebody was to scoop their foot across the floor, you're going to hear it inside that body chute. But on the upper floors, because they are open, we have did tests before where we put people in the center of the building and people at the far end and just have them talk amongst themselves to see if we could pick up the noise or if it was audible to even a recorder, and it's not.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the conversation.
And Mike,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, the building itself, can you share how big it is? Because isn't it close to like 1 million square feet?
It's 195,000 square feet.
Okay.
It's huge.
I got another question. This question is for your parapsychology part.
Okay.
Mr. Kevin Wilson in the chat room would like to know, do you think that intelligent hauntings can be surrounded by residual haunting?
Extremely. Most of what the shadow apparitions that people are seeing at Waverly Hills, I believe probably 90% of that is residual.
Mm-hmm.
Is what we're seeing. Intelligent hauntings at Waverly, there is intelligent hauntings there. They're very rare. I keep calling him a person, the spirit that I was just talking about that does nasty things. That's very much intelligent. and the little girl we talked to that's intelligent. But I would say probably anywhere from 90% of the hauntings up there is residual hauntings.
Wow. Good questions.
All right, thanks, Luana.
Yeah. We when we were with you the first trip, I didn't get the chance to investigate with you this last time, and I was really bummed out about that. But you did take us around the building, and you were able to really get a different level of interaction. I remember the electroshock therapy room. We went in there, and as you were talking about the temperature changing, we were able to do that as well. And at the same time, and I want to say maybe you were trying to communicate with who you keep referring to, because the camera, I remember the camera that we had rolling in there just shut off. And I remember you saying you don't like to be recorded, do you? So maybe you can talk about that.
Okay. Well, I can see that we're going to go back to this person. So, all right. I'll go ahead and bring his name up. I'll bring his name up to y'all. His name is Tim. And Tim has been there a very, very long time. And, yes, whenever you bring him up, especially up there at the hill, he makes things malfunction. He does a lot of things. He really doesn't like me talking about him and the things that he can do because he tries to stay evasive. Not saying that he's evil. He doesn't want people really knowing what he's doing in the background. But see, he always pops up. He's a very, very strong spirit. And anytime I take people through Waverly Hills, eventually it leads around to where he comes up because he listens in. He's almost like a kingpin, almost like a leader up there, to where he wants to know what's being said, who's doing what, and it's almost like he's a controller. He's a control freak because he'll come through on EVPs and stuff like that, and if he's done, or if you're talking to another spirit, and he says if he comes across and says he's done, that's it. You're not going to get anything else out of the building. But yes, they do interact with me very much because I speak with them daily. I mean, I'm up there every day, and that's part of my job and part of what I do. I go in there and try to keep them happy to where they'll feel comfortable with people coming in and such. I know it sounds crazy, but that's what I do. And Tim, I shouldn't say unfortunately, but Tim is very accustomed to me, and he knows the things I do. Sometimes he gets aggravated with me, especially when I tell people when they're seeing stuff down the hall because they use misdirection a lot. Okay. And I'll tell people, so, well, you're seeing that down there, but get prepared because this is a game. What you're seeing down there is going to happen right here in a bit. And that really ticks them off. It's like I ruined the surprise for them,
I remember that when we were with you. Yeah, you were telling us that.
Yeah, and usually it does happen. And because I call them out on their games a lot. It's like, okay, I know you're going to do something. Go ahead and do it. And they'll do it. But,
wow.
Yeah, it's they know me quite well, so it's easy for me to walk into the building and get an interaction with them.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, I know being the resident investigator at our location, it's a neat dynamic that not all teams have. It's nice for us. We've been at our location for 4 years, and again, when you can develop that rapport, that relationship with different spirits, they do interact with you, you can draw them out and, learn about them too. That's what we try to do is we're really curious about who they were and, why they want to be there. And so I think it's a new dynamic. And
It is. Like I said, if you're there for an amount of time, you they become really not to be spirits anymore. They become individuals.
Right.
Know? And they're like work partners.
Yeah.
I can walk in the building and say, well, come on, guys. Got a group of people come in. Come on. I want you to show them something, please.
Yeah.
And they never fell. But I'm always respectful to them. And even Tim, I'm respectful to him. I've got on him before for doing things like throwing rocks and all that. But it's always in a nice way. It's always like, oh, come on, man. Don't do this. And that's another reason why we don't allow provoking up at Waverly Hills. And because people will go in there. For some reason, people get it in their mind that they have to go in there and make them mad so they can get a reaction. It's like, you don't have to make them mad. Just go in and talk to them. These people lived here. These were living beings at one time that were suffering from a very bad disease. And, they had a hard life all the way up to the end. Why do you want to go in and call them names and stuff like that? Go in and talk to them nice, and you're going to get a lot of reaction out of them because they do want to talk, and they do get lonely.
Yep. And I totally relate to that because it is, when we were there, we all of the investigators, we had so many different voices we picked up through the night answering our questions. And we did. We tried to ask them about their life there. What was life like? Can you tell us? And we were curious about, how it was when they were alive, not just focusing on them being dead, right? So that was like definitely, we got the most out of Waverly than any other location we've ever investigated. And it's just like all night long. There was a lot of times I couldn't decipher what they were trying to say to me. It just wasn't clear enough, but I could hear them. And I knew that they were there.
Oh, they love to talk. They love to talk. And, they love company. They do love company. And for the most part, people ask me, when they go in there, people will say, well, do they know they're dead? And I'll tell them, I'll say, to them, they're not dead.
Yeah.
They're not dead.
Yeah.
I mean, they're very much alive. And, you're walking into their space and into their area, and you're a visitor. You're a visitor there. Putting it, I guess to put it blunt, the way I usually describe Waverly when people ask me about it, it's because it was a town of its own up there. I mean, it was its own city at a time. And I tell people, this is a city of the dead. You're in their area, and that'll never change because they're not going to give it up. That's their home. That was families, generations of families that lived there, worked there, and died there. And as far as they're concerned, it's still theirs.
Right. And, again, another reason why, to respect and not provoke. I know I get very protective of the spirits at the location I go into. It becomes, like you said, they're an individual. I try to tell them I really enjoy your interaction. I want to know more about you. And they know that. They know that your intention is good, and they will respond to that. They will work with you if you go in there. And I don't understand why so many people just jump to the provocation, but it's unfortunate because they just are so anxious. I call them thrill seekers because that's all they want is something bad or something intense to happen, and so they just want to anger something, not really understand who it is, what it is, why it's there.
You're absolutely correct, Luana. That's what they do up there, and some people, not all people, You know, I usually head them off at the get-go, you know. But I always tell people, you know, you don't want to provoke anything in this building. And then if they ask me why, I give them the whole spiel. You know, it's like, this is their home. Their home.
Mm-hmm.
You're in their area. You're in their territory. How would you feel if somebody came into your house, walked in, and just started yelling at you? It's not going to go well. And I said it don't go well with them either. And they're like, well, I just want them to show me it's not going to go well. No, you don't. You don't want that. For one, it takes a lot of energy for them to do that. And I'm sure that if they could muster up the energy, that they would show you. You know, they would show you the door. But I told them, I said, don't do that. You don't want to do that. These spirits up here, they're not, or in any location, spirits in any location, they're not really intending to do harm. You know, if they want to communicate, they will. If they don't, they won't. And sometimes they just don't have enough energy to do that. So a lot of people make a common mistake by thinking that there's no activity going on, that there's no spirits there. That's not exactly the case, because spirits don't have potential energy. They work off kinetic energy. Mm-hmm. And if they don't have that kinetic energy to work with at the time, they can't cross over into our space. So they have to build up the energy. Just because a lot of people say, well, the building, it was active and it went dead. Okay, well, it used up all of its kinetic energy. Doesn't mean that they're still not there. They're probably there looking at you right now. But they can't respond until they build up that energy. Which, that's, to me, that's one of the most interesting studies about spirits, is where they draw their energy, what they can do with their energy. And then I'm thinking, what are they thinking in the meantime where they don't have the energy? Are they getting frustrated because they can't make themselves known or such? You know, it's an interesting concept.
Yeah, definitely. And I think what I always think is I kind of think it's funny at times, because people come into the tours and they just want something to happen, but their intentions aren't good, right? So they start kind of provoking, and I always remind them, you know, you will get a lot more responses and a lot more interaction if you're kind and curious. And it's interesting to me that, I mean, it's just like in life, right? If you have somebody that you're around that is interesting to be around and is curious about what you do as a profession or who you are and is asking you questions, you're more likely to want to talk to them and interact with them than somebody who's mean to you. Right. And I see it all the time on tours where spirits will choose who they want to communicate with. And I see a lot of groups that come back and they're disappointed because they got nothing. Like there was nothing that happened. And it's like, okay, well, you started out the night, you know, talking bad to them, and that's how you set the tone. They're not going to come around you and, you know.
Yeah,
so I see it a lot.
Yeah, they don't want to hang around you if you're going to be nasty to them. Yeah, you're absolutely correct. You know, but usually if I'm calling something out for somebody, I don't remember exactly what I did with you when I was up there with your group, but usually I'll say, if I see them, because sometimes I can see them first, and I say, hey, I see you. I said, can you come closer, please? I always say please. With everything that I start out with, please, I really want to talk to you. I want to talk to you. I just want to know if you'll talk to me, please. And I almost always get a response out of that. But I've seen groups that come up there, and this is your groups that are very inexperienced. They'll come in and go, talk into this recorder here. If you're here, answer me. If you're here, well, I mean, I always put it back into perspective, because I think of how I would react if somebody walked in my house and said, if you're here, talk to me. Give me your name.
Yeah.
You know, when did you die?
I agree.
And especially, when did you die? That's the thing that really gets me the most out of people that will do that. It's like, you don't ask them that. And they're like,
exactly.
What do you mean? I said, because death is a very personal thing. It's a very personal thing. And to them, they're not dead.
Right.
And, you know, I would, if I was a spirit, I wouldn't answer that. Would you?
No, I know. I'm totally with you. I never ask that question, and I try to help others understand. Ask them about them. Ask them, learn about them. Ask them if they were here and they were alive, what questions would you be asking them? And that seems to get more responses than focusing on, again, the death part of it. That's what I avoid, and it does. You get a totally different energy vibe. And not just, you know, when I was listening to you say, you always say please, and you did that night. You were great about that. The other thing, you know, is when they do respond, you know, we thank them. Thank you for that, you know, and let them know that you appreciate the interaction. And they'll, a lot of the time, I mean, if they have the energy, again, I don't know that they always are on a full tank of energy. And so there's times that I know that they're probably drained, that they don't have enough to communicate. But when they do, you know, we always try to say thank you for that.
Yeah, I always do that too. I always thank them. And when I end a session, whether they had enough energy or not, I always want to end a session, and if nothing happened, I said, well, thank you. Thank you for trying. You know, I know you're here, and I really appreciate it. Thank you. And I've had some investigators tell me, they said, well, nothing happened. Why are you thanking the air? Because you don't know for sure if they were there or not. You know, they might have been trying, you know. Or maybe they didn't want to talk to us. Don't know. But either way, I'm in their area. So, you know, I'm not intruding. I'm being respectful. Thank you. You know, and usually I kick it off with this. I tell people, just for the fun of it, I say, thank you for not choking the living, you know what, out of me. You know?
Yeah, exactly. Tracy, Tracy, are you still with us?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Were we going to, out of curiosity, do we have a scheduled break, or are we going to keep going?
We're just going to keep rolling.
All right, keep rolling. Okay. I noticed in chat there's some questions, and I know that, again, Tracy posted the number. If you are interested in asking questions, you can call in 646-929-2384 is the number to contact us. There was one thing that I wanted you to, one of the stories, Mike, that you had told me when we were there in 2012, and that was one night when you went into the building. You had mentioned that you saw what you thought were people walking in there, or a person, and you went in there, and I think all the way up to 5 when the door closed, and you had to wait till the next morning. Do you recall telling us that story?
Up to 5? Are you talking about the time I got locked in the building?
Yes. If you could tell users that, that always stuck with me, that your little story about that.
Okay. Well, years ago, when I first started with Waverly, I would do the overnights, and the overnights would usually end at 4 a.m. in the morning, and this is prior to the owners living up there, which they do live up there now. Charlie and Tina do live on the property, and the property is monitored 24/7. But back in these days, they didn't live there yet, and the only people that would be on the hill would be me and the tour group that was coming in for the night. And I would go up and I would get them through their overnight, but at 4 a.m., it was my responsibility to get them off the hill, lock the gate, and come back up and walk the building and lock it down, which, you know, is not really a big deal. I mean, it's kind of hair-raising because don't get me wrong. I mean, doing this for 39 plus years takes a lot to shake me, but I do get nervous at times. And on a couple occasions when I walked up to the fourth floor, as soon as I entered the fourth floor to make sure everything was cool, and all that, the stairwell doors did slam shut, and I couldn't get them open. They would not open, and I was trapped on the fourth floor. My flashlight went dead, and my cell phone went dead. And so I couldn't call the owners. I couldn't call anybody. Couldn't do anything. And the doors would not release for several hours afterwards. And I didn't stay in the hallways. I went out on the solarium, out on the balcony, because, something was keeping me in there. And it's like, I don't really want to see what's keeping me locked in here. And since then, I've been thinking on that. Since those lock-ins, I was wondering if maybe instead of bad intentions of locking me in, maybe they were intentions of saying, hey, we want to get to know you on a personal level. Don't be afraid of it. And such. And, as soon as we get our answers, then we'll let you go.
Yeah.
But on two separate occasions when this did happen, the doors did release at one point, and I was able to escape. But I will tell you this. That's probably, in my whole 39-plus years, the most terrified I've ever been in my life, because you're locked in and you can't go nowhere. And you can't call nobody. You have no flashlight, and it's totally dark in the building. I even went to the point where I went out on the solarium and looked down, which you're very high in the air on the fourth floor in Waverly Hills, because the floors are very high, trying to think of a way I could climb down the outside of the building to get out. Of course, there's no way to do that. So I had to wait it out. But
Wow.
It was a very terrifying but eye-opening experience for me. It's like, hey, I'm in their domain now, and now I can't get out of their domain. And so, it's, without going into too much detail, that was a very personal time that happened to me. It did happen, and I won't forget that at all. But,
right.
If you're locked in up there by yourself, I don't care how big of a man or a woman or whatever, how sure or brave you are of yourself, they will show you that they can do whatever they want to do whenever they want to do it. And I think basically they were setting the ground rules up there, saying, look, you may be this, but we can do this.
Right. Interesting. Very interesting. Tracy, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much. On the phone right now, I believe we have Todd. Todd, you on the phone?
Yes. Hey, everybody. Hi, Luana. Hey, Tracy.
Hi.
Mike, it's a pleasure to be listening to you. My name's Todd. I used to work in the state of New York at a psychiatric hospital that was built in 1873 and it closed in 92. And I know firsthand about what can and does go on and what still even goes on today. And I wanted to ask your opinion on a couple of things. I hear talk about this child on the adolescent unit that everybody says, be careful. It very well could be a demon versus a ghost. And excuse me, I wanted to ask your opinion. Do you think that it's honestly something demonic versus something insane, which is what the people were that were part of the hospital? Even if you went there as a sane person, like what happened at my hospital, sane people were brought there and left. and they did go insane because of the environment eventually. But it does not mean they're demonic. That's question number one. So the question I guess in short is do you think that there's really demons up there in Waverly?
Well, I don't know if there's for sure, Todd, if there is demons there. I usually tell people, and this is the way I approach things, because if something bad is in the area, you will know it. You will know it because you'll feel it. You will feel it. You'll get a feeling of dread and just the all-out feeling that you shouldn't be there. And as far as conversing with the spirits, I don't think any paranormal investigator, no matter how experienced that they are, ever knows exactly what they're conversing with. You know, I mean, it could say it's a child. Doesn't mean it's a child. And this is going to sound kind of strange to the audience, but I do tell people this. I don't trust any of them. I really don't. I've had them come across and tell me this is Mary or this is Timmy and all that, and I'll go on with the conversation with them. Do I believe everything they told me? No, I don't.
Yeah.
Because,
I agree with that definitely because the audience that we're talking about that we're dealing with in places like that, they were there because they had problems, and because they've passed does not mean that their troubles have passed. So I can fully get that, and also too I agree that just because it looks like a child you're talking to does not necessarily mean it's a child. But on the other hand, I think that the ghost can either manifest itself as whatever it wants to at whatever stage of its life that it wanted to as well. So you could be speaking with the same person being introduced to you as a 6-year-old versus, 85 when they actually passed away or someplace in between. Would you say that that's accurate or no?
Yes, I would say that's very accurate. That's a good point you just brought up, and I believe that wholeheartedly. It's like when people are up at the hill and they're seeing the shadow apparitions. A lot of them appear to be only like 4 foot tall, and everybody's saying, "Well, it's children." Well, you don't know that it's children. You have no idea that it's children, and they're like, "Well, what do you think it is?" I'm not an expert. There's nobody in the world is an expert in this field. Because if you were, then you'd have all the answers. But nobody knows what this is. All we know is that it's something. It exists, and it can present itself in many different forms. I've seen apparitions, shadow apparitions mainly, that can go from 4 foot tall and engulf an entire hallway. I mean, it all changes. And people are like, well, you talk about, okay, this apparition named Tim. Okay, the only reason I talk about Tim is because he's very adamant that his name is Tim. Do I believe his real name's Tim? No, because he calls himself Mary also. And the reason that this Tim person came into play is because he's still the same one that I used to speak with doing the temperature changes, because he can still do that. He still has the same characteristics and all that, but I think he's taken on the name Tim and Mary because everybody comes in the building looking for the child apparitions of Timmy and Mary. That those names are said so much up there, and I think he's just latched onto that and said, he is Tim. Right. Not Tim. He says his name's not Tim. But, but he also told me his name's Mary, too.
Yeah, yeah. In other words, if you want, in other words, if you want Mary, I'll give you Mary, kind of thing.
Exactly. And so I don't really think he's human. The spirit I'm talking about, I really don't think it's human.
Right.
And that's I always, people are like, well, will you call him out? I don't really want to call him out because, I mean, I've had a relationship with him for years that I often wonder what I'm having a relationship with. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Right. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
He makes me nervous.
Yeah. Well, I can totally identify with every word you just said because I work with guys that I had over the years that I could just glance at them and tell I knew where their head was at, and you could either approach them or be safe and not approach them at different periods of time. But, again, because of the illness, there's no guarantee that switch won't flip in an instant at any given moment. So you always had to respect the audience that you were proverbially playing to in that sense. And nothing changes, in my opinion, when you die. If you've got emotional and psychological problems when you're alive, when you pass, those bags are coming with you. And a lot of times I think that places like this remain haunted because of the confusion that's going on mentally. I think that a lot of these people don't even realize they're dead. It's not a question, of being, rude and asking them when you died. I think they look at you like, "Were you kidding? What are you talking about? I'm not dead."
Exactly.
And so. And that kind of jolt anyway when you're confronted, if for instance, if I had a patient that had been molested, I certainly wouldn't walk up to him and say, "Hey, Frank, what's it like, yada, yada, yada." That's the last thing I would want to do, number one.
Yeah.
You don't pull a scab off a wound, you just let it go. But you try to figure out how to deal with them and deal with them on that level. And, I think that smile goes a lot farther than screaming or hollering. And I really respect Luana for her values on and the work she does as well, and Tracy too. There's a lot of people that I really respect what they do and how they do it. There's others that I wouldn't go to a bar with them. Well, you're welcome. There's others that I wouldn't go to a bar with them, much less go on an investigation with them.
I understand. Yeah, exactly. And I'm from that school too. I work around so many different individuals that people, and I've confronted this before. I'm sure you have too, and so does Luana. Maybe even Tracy. But so many different individuals have come up and just want to be nasty about this stuff. And I've even had people that have come up to the hill and said, "Well, they're dead. Big deal." It's like, they don't think they're dead. They don't think they're dead at all. And by the way, you're in their home. You're in their home. And they're like, "Well, why is it their home? If it was, this wasn't a home. They lived in other places and all that." Yeah, but you don't know their situation. We don't know their situation, because most of the people that were at Waverly were there with their families. It was a community, okay? Because then it was and stuff. I said, why do you want to walk in and invade that, I said, what if I walked in your house and said, you're not important. You're not important. It's not your home. Why don't you go home? Why don't you, well, you are home. But people, I don't know. Some people just baffle me, with the way they look at it. And like you talk, I love talking to you. You make total sense. You make total sense. I would go on an investigation with you anywhere.
No, thank you.
Hey, Mike, I got I got Mr. George Lopez on the phone that wants to speak with you for a minute.
Yeah, I know George. Okay.
Like that, this George?
Hey, what's going on, guys? How you doing tonight?
Hey, George.
Good.
Hey, Todd. Todd, could you,
Yes.
if you have a mute button on your phone, could you mute it? Because
Yeah.
there we go.
I was going to hang up. Mike, I want to thank you very much for the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Todd, for calling in. Hi, George.
Hi, Luana. How you doing?
I'm doing good.
I just want to let you guys know I already sent a text message to Matt Slozer. I fired him from Sunday Night Dead. You guys are doing a better job, so.
All right. That's awesome.
No, Mike, I mean, really interesting conversation tonight. Myself and a couple of my team members had the privilege of visiting Waverly a couple of years back. Had a great time, too. But, you know, I'm curious to take a perspective with you with regards to the diversity in this community, where there are those, as Luana called it, the adventure seekers that are out there. But there are some people out there that have made a lucrative living by being a little bit disrespectful of what they do out there to try to perpetuate activity by either provoking, insulting, things of that nature as well. I mean, is the cookie-cutter pattern really the direction that we need to go and everybody should go the polite way, or do we need those, I guess, risk-takers is a better term for people that are going to try to instigate an issue, and as you're saying, politeness is the pattern it seems to be. And a location such as Waverly Hills Sanatorium, where there were not criminals, there were not the criminally insane, there were not, the aspect of murderers or psychotic serial killers that were contended with. These were people who suffered through a very, very difficult time with tuberculosis. There should be a factor there, without question, of politeness and respect. Not knowing the prior history, as you talked about, if there's Native American culture that was there prior, were there, people that were harvesting negative energies at that time, and that's some of what you've had to contend with, including the psychic attack with your ear and your loss of breath. But do we need to go down that same pattern where everybody needs to take a directive of the same exact format, or do we need that diversity? Because from the dirt grows the flowers, and in this circumstance, somebody may start as doing provoking, but find a more strategic way of getting that communication back. In other words, whatever works out there. And I understand from the spiritualistic standpoint, especially with somebody who's got a background in parapsychology for so many years, that you have to take into consideration that these were people. And we understand that they're people, and you have to, just like you would treat your other kind here in this world, you should do in so with the people who've crossed over. But my question to you really comes down to, should we all go through that same pattern, or should there be those open opportunities, let people experiment and see if we can't find the optimum way to keep that communication across the board?
Okay, well, to answer your question there, George, which, by the way, I remember you. It was very nice for you coming up to Waverly there, George. To answer that question, see, I'm open-minded to just about everything, but I will not conduct my ways of investigation by everybody else's means. You see, I learn from everybody. I think all paranormal investigators should step back and take lessons from other investigators, because, like I said, we're not, nobody's an expert in this field. And I've never told anybody really, per se, how they should investigate. In any instance, I've given advice. At Waverly, of course, since I'm the head of that up there on their paranormal research and all that, I don't want anybody to provoke anything up there. I've never told anybody you can't provoke other than Waverly. Because, everybody has their own style of bringing out things. My style is I bring it out by speaking to them, call them out, and not being nasty to them and stuff. or provoking them. But there are some investigators that get results by doing that. And, I guess what I'm saying, George, is that's just not my style. But pretty much investigators can, in my eyes, investigate the way they want to investigate.
Do you think, though, Mike, that's, and I wonder about this, too, because I've heard too many tales about this, and I know Luana is one of those exceptions, one of those people that they could walk into a building, regardless of being polite, regardless of provoking, there is a vibration or an aura about them that draws communication automatically. Are people just kind of, the aspect of doing the questioning is almost a redundancy, that it's not even important because somebody could go in there without that kind of attraction that Luana has, where no matter what they do, they're not going to get anything because they just don't have that. Luana can go in there and sit down and play a game of solitaire on the floor and get just a crap load of different pieces of evidence just because they're attracted to a person like that. Do you think there's more to that aspect of it than it is the vocalization of what they're doing during an investigation?
No, most definitely. Most definitely. Myself, I have many attractions, or attachments, is what I should say. I believe that some people, we call them ghost magnets. And some people are magnets. Some people are on the same vibe because everything works with vibrations. And I think that the spirits, even though when people come in, like if they come up there at Waverly or any haunted location that my group or stuff are studying, people are like, we want to go and sit. Well, they already know you're here. They know what you're thinking. You don't have to speak it. They already know what you're thinking. They know what's in your mind. They know why you're here. They know what your intentions are and stuff. And they do. They can pick up on all that. They know what you're going to do before you do it, because everything works off vibrations, energy. And, yes, there is some people in the world that they're more attracted to because, they just want to be around them. This is a person that is on the same level that they are, and even though this person might not even know that they're on the same level as the spirits.
Yeah, too scary. Women and spirits both know what we're thinking. That's a scary life.
Well, yeah, it is, yeah. But, yeah, it is an interesting concept there on it. A lot of people are like, well, it seems like the spirits follow you around. Well, they do. But to me, George, it's been with me for years and years and years. And I became so numb to it. People used to complain at my previous workplaces and stuff. I could walk in and computers would crash and stuff like that. And they start blaming me for it. Why don't you, take your ghost and go, well, I didn't do it. I just walked into the room. I didn't physically want to do that. I don't know why your computer's crashed or why your cell phone drained or and it happens at my house too. I have many, many attachments here, and I don't know why they want to hang around. I don't invite them to hang around. They just do. Maybe they want to be around. And they don't usually bother me. They bother the people around me. From time to time. They get frustrated with them, but, hey, it happens. I can't change it. I can't make them leave. They're there, I guess, because they want to be.
Right. Yeah. I know Tracy's got another call. I'd like to stay on because if we have time, I've just a couple other questions for you, but I don't want to take up that time. Tracy?
Thank you, George. Sunday Night Dead, is this Kevin?
This is Kevin. How are you guys doing?
Good. I'm sorry, Kevin. Go ahead with your question, buddy.
All right, so this kind of is more towards of what Mike was saying earlier about how the spirits, to them, they're not dead. And it just kind of makes you rethink, well, what is life, what is death? And my question for Mike, and pretty much anybody is open to answer, but what is your opinion on what is life and what is death, and what is
life and what is death? Well, I think life is how you perceive it. You know, maybe we are dead. We might be dead. Maybe they're alive, and we're the dead people. You know, it's all different dimensions. Actually, I don't technically believe that anybody's dead or any creature is dead. You know, I think you go from one existence to another because scientifically speaking, you know, thought waves never die. They're just like radio waves, just like what we're doing right now. You know, everything consists of energy. It just goes from one form to another. So is anything really dead? Not when it's contrived of thought waves and energy. You know, it can't be. It's scientifically impossible for these emotions or anything to be dead. It goes from one pole to another, just like everything that we're speaking right now. The words that I'm speaking right now are going to bounce around in space forever and ever and ever. And eventually they'll come back around. And without being any more technical than that, that's the best way that I can describe it. Basically, I don't believe in death.
That's a great answer. I really appreciate you taking your time for that.
Thank you.
Well, George, since you're on the phone, what's your answer to that?
A few weeks, you guys remember about a few weeks back or a month back on the one Sunday show, I'm sitting there going, boy, I wish I was back in college smoking marijuana for this kind of question. Because it has so much depth to it. I mean, for if you want to look at it from a contemplative standpoint, life is a consistent recontribution to the collective consciousness, to give, to help, to contribute to the greater good. Death is the opposite, just complete and utter selfishness, I think, is death. If you are not giving back, whether it's just to your family, but to the community is greater, to society is greater, that's life. That's giving yourself out there. But if you're talking about from a paranormal standpoint, I have to agree 100% with Mike. It's, energy is everlasting, and it just transformed from one position to another, from one type of energy to another. And right now, and you could look at it from what he's talking about. He's absolutely right. Mike is saying, this could be death, or the entrapment into a physical body, and that release when you cross over, when you leave this vessel, could be that freedom, absolute 100% true life, because then you become part of that collective consciousness. So both of those comparatively could work when we think about that. We fear death when it's only the unknown. But then again, that's why we fear spiders. That's why we fear the dark. It's the unknown. But truthfully, behind it, once the knowledge is there, I think that there's more enlightenment than we could ever possibly imagine when we all meet on the other side.
You're absolutely correct, George. I'm with you 100% on that.
I love these answers. I really appreciate all your time.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Yep.
Well, I think we have some EP. Yep.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Laura.
Oh no, did you have something for Kevin?
I just wanted to let Kevin know he's more than welcome to stay on with us tonight.
Okay.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Well, we do have some EVPs, and then I think George had some other questions that he wanted to ask as well. So shall we get into some of the EVPs? And these EVPs, I guess, are these are from the first trip down to Waverly. I wanted to share with our listeners just some of the stuff that we collected on the first trip. And I've mentioned already on this show that there was a lot that, what I was not able to decipher, things that I could hear them, but I couldn't make out what they were trying to say. So these are some of the captures that I came back with. And Tracy, I'll let you give me the name of it, and we'll go from there.
Okay, the first one says, I am.
Okay. So, okay, go ahead and play this one. Just go ahead and start it.
Sure.
Okay. All right, cool. Now we can start.
Hold on. Okay. So, is there anyone here with us right now? Okay, let me turn it up a little bit.
Okay. All right, cool. Now we can start.
Hold on. Okay. So, is there anyone here with us right now?
Okay, so we kind of gave it away, but I want to at least let you guys know this was in the morgue. And Mike, I'm not sure, you know, if you have anything you want to add to the morgue location depth, where I got a lot of voices that came through. And this was a male voice that we heard. We were just starting the night out.
Well, it's definitely, I mean, in my book, that would be a Class A EVP, because you can definitely hear where it says I am. And I would think in the morgue, you know, in the morgue area, because the bodies were being transferred to the morgue does not necessarily mean that the spirit wasn't there either. I would think it would be a traumatic shock to all of us if we were to leave our physical body and to see our body. You're looking at yourself, knowing that you're not there in yourself, that I would think that most spirits would tend to hang around their body for a while, you know, because of the confusion. It's like, well, I'm seeing myself, but I can't move my arms, I can't move my hands, I can't move my legs and stuff like that. Why can't I do this? I would think that the transition between life and death would be, you know, very confusing to all of us at first, because it'd be hard to take, because we're moving around in a physical body right now, and then all of a sudden we're seeing ourselves, and you can't physically, that body cannot physically manipulate itself anymore. And so I'm thinking that maybe you might be picking up on that EVP, maybe something not so much residual, but maybe somebody saying, yes, I'm here. I'm here. And but maybe there's more to that, where they're like, I don't know why I'm here, but I'm here.
Right. Yes, that was Greg that asked the question. He's one of the investigators in my group. And we went into the morgue for that reason. Like, when I was trying to connect with spirits, my intention was to understand, like, what would it be like those first moments that you transition from what we consider life into death. And that's really, you know, the questions that we formulated. We had both male and female responses. And this one, to me, sounds like a male saying I am.
Oh, it most definitely does to me, too.
All right. Tracy, do you want to go on to the next one? Let me go ahead and set this one up. We are still in the morgue in this particular EV when we capture this EVP. And I'm trying to, again, connect with whatever may be there, trying to imagine, you know, what it was. Actually, let's go into, Tracy, can we go to EVP 3?
I can.
Okay, hang on a second. Let me set this one up. This is basically one of our investigators making the statement saying, I bet they're curious why we're here, right? So we are trying to, again, connect with what may be around us and that they may be curious about us as well. And this is what I hear is a female voice that responds. I'm going to let you guys listen to it. Now, what I will say about this is that her voice is somewhat choppy. Like, as she's trying to talk, it's like she can get one word out at a time. So let me go ahead and have that played for you.
Okay, here we go.
They're curious why we're here. What do you want here?
All right, let me turn it up a little bit, and we'll shoot it again. Here we go.
They're curious why we're here. What do you want here?
Okay, so there's actually, did you guys actually make out what she's trying to say?
No, I didn't.
And the last I couldn't pick up. First was what? It sounded like, what do you want to have, or what do you want to hear?
Yeah, so that's what I picked up is what do you want here? And then what was interesting, and it's really quiet, but right as the last word is being said, it sounds like a male saying, get out.
Okay. Let's listen to it again.
I'll play it again.
They're curious why we're here. What do you want here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did hear that.
Yeah.
I did hear
And
that.
the male voice that we picked up in the morgue, as we started talking about, because one of the investigators didn't know what, she was looking at the draining table, and she didn't know what that was, and she asked about that. And I remember on audio going back, and he sounded very, upset and frustrated when we mentioned what it was. He said, oh, shut up. So it was interesting. We only got, we obviously didn't hear it real time, but when we went back through audio, she sounded very curious when she was talking to us, but he sounded a lot more frustrated. Yeah. And then, Mike, I don't know if you remember, but you took us into the cafeteria area that night.
Uh-huh. Yes.
And you closed all the curtains, and then you had asked them to move the curtains, and that did happen because you could see the light coming in. It was really dark in that back corner. We sat up on that stage thing across the room,
Mm-hmm.
and then you were able to get the curtains to move.
Oh,
So,
with the curtains?
Yeah. I thought that was really neat. You said, let's see if they can, manipulate the curtains and move them. And you asked, and they did. They responded and moved the curtains.
Yeah, they do that quite a bit.
Yeah. So this EVP was captured outside of that cafeteria area. And I always feel like they like to bust me when I'm talking to myself. I find on investigations I do talk to myself a lot, like I'm thinking out loud. So I'm actually talking to myself, and I was looking outside of the cafeteria area. I was trying to find a stairwell, and I was asking, if one of the hallways or the corridors or whatever, if it goes all the way down. And I get a response, what sounds like a male voice. What's interesting about this one, and this one again is a little bit more quiet, not as prominent as the male voice that we heard initially, but it keeps talking to me. So it keeps talking to me and answering me, and it's like a full sentence as he's responding to me. So let's go ahead and play EVP number 4.
All right, here we go.
I definitely hear him talking to you.
I'll turn it up a little bit, and we'll shoot it one more time.
What did you guys hear? Anything?
At the end of it, I thought he said something about you can have this room, but I really couldn't make it out.
Yeah,
subject.
Yeah, it's subject to pareidolia. To me, it sounded like you started off with spirits are right here now, broken up. Spirits are right here now is what it sounded like. But again, it's subject to pareidolia because it's strong whisper.
Yeah. So what I actually heard, and again, I listened to this several times. When I'm saying, I wonder if this goes all the way down, the male voice comes in, Actually, not sure what that is.
Sorry, that was a door that was closing.
Oh, okay. But when I say, I wonder if this goes all the way down, what I hear is, yes, right there. So he responds and he says, yes, right there. And then he goes on to talk to me. Now, these are really quiet, but what's interesting is I hear him say, hi. And then when I don't respond, I hear hello, like kind of more like hello. And then at the very end, the last thing that I hear him saying is, don't leave me yet. So let's see if you guys can make out anything.
Okay.
Play the same one again. Here we go.
What is this?
I did hear "Don't Leave Me Yet."
Yeah.
I did hear
that. Was
that.
a neat one.
And that's really not a surprise, Luana, because through a lot of our EVPs that we've done up there that we've captured and all that, a lot of them say that. Say things like, please don't leave. Help me. Please don't leave me. And a lot of the EVPs up there that come across, they're rather sad sounding. You know, it's like they come across like, hey, you found me, you know, and I can communicate with you. Don't leave. Don't leave. You know, help me. Help me. And the sad part about it up there, and this goes back to people with provoking things up there, and what I found through most of the EVPs and through spirit boxes and stuff, and I mean, these are clear, even across spirit boxes. I'm not a big believer in spirit boxes. I'm not. The FM scanners, frequency scanners, but we've caught so many full sentences that were clear as day that came across them, where these people, a lot of them are asking for help. And when I've responded to them, you know, how can I help you? How can I help you? They want to leave. Get me out of here. Get me out of here. Tim's a big one with doing that. Get me out of here. And it's like, I can't get you out of here. You know, the only way you can get out of here is cross over. And I know that's kind of a vague thing for anybody to say because we don't know what crossing over actually is. But they don't want to. They don't want to cross over. And a lot of people have asked me that in the past. They're like, how come they don't want to cross over? Well, put yourself in their perspective. Everybody is pretty much brought up, most people I know, not everybody, but in a Christianity belief that once you cross over, that's your judgment.
Right.
If you cross over, where are you going? Are you going to heaven or are you going to go to hell? And so a lot of them, the gist that I've got from most of them, especially from Tim, they don't want to cross over. Because, you know, it's safer to be where he's at than it is that they set final judgment. That's just a theory. It's just a theory that it doesn't mean anything. It's just a theory. And I'm getting off the subject of your EVPs, but I was just going to add that in there, that a lot of them up there will say, please don't leave me.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear that you say that has been a common one. So it's not just us that picked that up. Yeah.
It's pretty common.
So we're going to do one more EVP, and this is again in the cafeteria area. When we first got in there, one of the investigators asked if did you like the children here at Waverly? And we get a response, and this was a pretty clear response that we picked up. Sounds, again, male to me.
Okay.
EVP number 5.
All right.
Did you like the children here?
there's actually two responses that we can hear with headphones. One of them is at the very, very end.
Okay, I'll play it one more time.
Would you like the children here?
Well, I heard a yes.
Yep.
At the first part of it. The last part, I couldn't hear. How about you, George?
Heard the yes too, and the child's voice at the end, is that an investigator or is that your capture?
No, the one, I think she made a sound at the very end, but the voice at the very end, and we'll play it again, is male, and what we heard very clearly with headphones is the word indeed. So that was kind of interesting because we usually don't say the word indeed. But that one, listen to it again and see if you can pick up. We got the yes. And then at the very end, I think she makes a sound, but right at the very end is when you'll hear it indeed.
All right, here we go.
Would you like the children here?
Possibly. I mean, I can't say for sure. And of course, my hearing's not all that great. I did hear the yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and especially, I mean, these ones, because we're kind of moving around and putting things down as well, it kind of contaminates some of the sounds there, too. But again, a lot of great captures that we have. I'm looking forward to getting with the team to see what we captured this last time that we were there. We still haven't even compiled everything. We had so many recorders and video cameras and things going. So who knows what we may have captured this last trip out there. George, we have some time. Did you want to ask your question?
Yeah, I had one that was objective and one that's subjective. The objective one is regards to, there's a lot of people, Mike, that I get to communicate with in this community on a regular basis, and I can't, you'll know, but I don't want to divulge it on the air or anything, but you'll know who I'm talking about. But somebody I was communicating with about a month and maybe a month and a half ago, you guys had a couple of serious situations there with a small team, a seven-person team, and there were some incidences there that I know you called in some help. I wanted to know what was the update on that. Was everybody okay at the result of that, where the eyes were turning and one of them kind of stood up a la Bram Stoker Dracula kind of way, the way that they got back up off the floor kind of a thing. There was some serious events that was allegedly happening there, and I know you can't really elaborate too much on it out of privacy, but was everything okay afterwards?
Yes. Yeah, everything was resolved as far as I know to this date. Haven't heard anything more back from these particular individuals. But yeah, as far as I know, everything was resolved.
Okay. And finally, the other one was the aspect you gave you different versions of the shadows earlier on. From the ones that are somewhat transparent to the ones that are more solid in shape form to the ones that are just mass forms of shadow. I had an experience at Rolling Hills just this last month. I went up there for ParaQuest, and after more than a decade of doing this, there's nothing that will ever compare to what I experienced there for the first time ever. And we were late in the Sunday night, and there was maybe 8 investigators, including Sharon Coral, the proprietor. And I happened to be sitting in one of the trigger objects wheelchair, and maybe 75 or 100 yards down the way on the left-hand side, there was a room that was set up as a hospital room with the bed, the surgical table, things of that nature. And that was the long end. We were at the close end of the atrium area, and I'm looking down the hall. The other 7 people are behind me. And for the first time in over a decade of experiencing all kinds of different things from paranormal, I've never seen this before, Mike, but it was straight out of a movie that this shadow creepers, the best way I can put it. And the best way I can describe it is picture somebody who has no legs or no use to their legs and how they would crawl out of a room. And this was, it was black hole vortex black, but it was in the shape of a person. You see the head pop out first, the right arm reach out to drag itself further into the hall from the room, and that's when I said, "You got to be frickin' kidding me!" Stood up and ran at it. The way it moved, though, Mike, it moved similar to the girl in The Grudge. And we talked about this topically last week on the show on Monday about, do they know our primal fears and do they mimic it because they know where they're going to touch us most deeply, psychologically. And the way it just kind of jarted and kind of moved very, very, choppy-like as it was coming out. And as soon as I got up and ran, it crawled back in, couldn't find anything whatsoever. But funny that you didn't mention full form in that aspect, the shadow creepers, because I've heard other testimonials from Waverly of the wall and the ceiling creepers that you guys had there as well. Are those still going on?
Oh, most definitely. Yeah, the creeper, in fact, he actually came out last night for a group of people. I wasn't expecting him to come out because the creeper, he's a rarity. He does come out from time to time, but he does exactly what you said. And that's what I tell people up there. The creeper preys on your fears because a lot of people see him as different things. I've seen him as several different things. And see, I'm profusely afraid of snakes. I hate snakes. And there was one evening that myself and Mike Couch, who is one of my students that was up there, he's got his own thing going on now with Lost Limbs Foundation. We had some people complaining that stuff was going on the third floor. And so we decided to go in there and talk to it. We didn't know what we was talking to at the time, but we got up there, and they were saying doors were hitting them. Doors were slamming and stuff, and it wasn't even storming that night. There was no wind. So we went up there, and I said, okay, well, what's going on? Why are you freaking these people out? Did somebody do something wrong or whatever? And these doors that had windows in the middle of them, had a light in the middle of them, they slammed shut, and it looked like an enormous, both of us seen us, we had our flashlights off, an enormous, like a python, crawl over the top of the door, and it came toward us real quick, which freaked me out because I hate snakes. I turned the light on. Of course, there was nothing there. And it was the creeper. And the creeper does prey off people's fears. And usually what I tell people about the creeper up there, don't run from it. Do not run from it. Stand your ground because it'll dissipate before it gets there. Its game is to draw out your fears because it's drawing off that energy. If you run from it, it'll chase you all over the place. But yes, people have seen the creeper up there in many different forms, just like you described. It'll go across the ceiling. It'll crawl sometimes. Sometimes it'll charge you. But it always does things in freakish ways, just to scare you, freak you out.
You probably didn't expect me to run at it because it backed back in again, which we're supposed to be.
There you go.
Luana, thank you, and also Tracy, thank you so much for letting me ask those questions.
Oh, absolutely.
Sure, George.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, and before you go, let us know what's going on tomorrow night for you.
Oh, next 2 weeks are going to be fun. Tomorrow night, Michelle Belanger, if you remember from Paranormal State fame, psychic medium, author, and acclaimed psychic vampire, going to be joining us tomorrow. And then the following week, the week of Halloween, we have an incredible ensemble cast telling their favorite ghost stories, their favorite experiences, including Nick Groff, Grant Wilson, Mark and Debbie Constantino, Keith and Carl, and Sandra Johnson, and, of course, Andrea Perrin from the Conjuring movie. She was the eldest daughter that experienced those events in Rhode Island back in the 1970s. That's going to be tomorrow night and then following Monday night, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Wonderful.
Awesome.
Wonderful.
All right. Thanks, George.
You're welcome.
Yeah, George, good hearing from you again, buddy.
Same here, Mike. Good hunting.
Well, Mike, can you tell some of our listeners maybe what's coming up on the radar for Waverly Hills and things that you may be involved in there, and if you want to give out any information about how people can contact you or Waverly Hills, where may be the best places to do that?
Well, one thing I would like to do, if this is okay with y'all, I'd like to announce the release of a book coming out on my group. It's the Southern Indiana Ghost Hunters Chronicles, and it will be available from Amazon.com this Thursday. And if anybody ever wanted to know what made the Ghost Hunter me, what makes me tick, you can find it in that book. And there won't be anything about Waverly in the book because my relationship with Waverly Hills is quite different with my relationship with my group. And so, it's two separate things. As far as Waverly Hills, I do invite anybody to come up there. If you want to see a great haunted attraction, what better place to go than a haunted house within a haunted house? We do give mini tours out there. You can see the building. If you're a newcomer to Waverly Hills, it's a great way to kind of check out the location and get a feel for it if you decide to do an overnight or so up at Waverly. You won't be disappointed. And I'm sure, Luana, you can contest to that.
Oh, yeah. We didn't go back. Yeah, we went back for a reason.
Waverly is a very haunted location, and I feel confident saying it's probably one of the most haunted locations in the world. I'm not saying it is the most, but I would say it's one of the most.
Yes, I would agree with that. And Mike, definitely send me a link to the book. I would love to check it out.
I will do that. As soon as it's sent to me, I'll send it to you. It just got published yesterday. And
very nice.
So it's in the works, and it will be available at Amazon.com. And it's a very good book.
Yeah, I can't wait. I'll definitely check it out, read it, and it's been great having you on the show. You've been a great guest for us. I love the stories that you have, your experiences, and I really hope the next time I make it down that way, we can investigate again together, because that was a fun night.
Oh, definitely. Well, whenever you're in the area, give me a ring. You've got me on Facebook. Let me know when you're in the area, and we'll try to hook up.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Tracy, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Mike, thanks so much for calling in, buddy. I wish we had another hour. I personally have so many questions. I'm going to seek you out on Facebook, and I'll leave you a couple messages.
All right. That sounds great, Tracy. Thank you for having me on.
All right, buddy. I appreciate you guys coming on. Mike, Luana, I hope you don't get too much snow.
That's always tough.
Enough before you can get your snowmobile out.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to see that for a while.
Yeah, I'm jealous. You're down in Florida.
My snowmobile runs on water. I guess the same principle. But anyway, all right, guys. You guys have a good night, and thank everybody for joining us tonight. And hopefully we'll see you all next Sunday. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.